system that consists of a communicating ventricular cavities filled with the CSF. The green colored C-shaped ventricle is the lateral ventricle. They are two in number, and in the very center of the diencephalon you can see the bluish color, the third ventricle. And let me mark that how they communicate. There lies the interventricular foramen, through which the cavity of the lateral ventricle is going to communicate with that of the third ventricle. Now this third ventricle through the cerebral aqueduct is supposed to communicate with that of the fourth ventricle, right? Now there is another schematic diagram to show you the two lateral blue color ventricles which are C-shaped, and they communicate with the reddish colored third ventricle through the interventricular foramen, right, being shown in the purple color. Now you can see that the yellow color cerebral aqueduct, which is the cavity of the midbrain, extends from the red third ventricle and enters into your green color fourth ventricle, right? And from here it has to connect itself to that of the central canal. And why this happens? Because the CSF that is being produced in the lateral ventricles and the third ventricle, and of course in the fourth ventricle as well, through the choroid plexus, and now it has to enter into the central canal. Now you can see another diagram that is going to show you the fourth ventricle and the details. It has got two lateral apertures, and they are going to form two foramen called as foramen of Luschka, and one median aperture which is called as foramen of Megendie. And you can also see that all of they carry the CSF in it, right? Now this is a very good diagram to show you the reddish color choroid plexus. The top one, let me mark it, is that of the lateral ventricle, and this choroid plexus is that of the third ventricle. And I can show you that finally they have to drain their content into the superior sagittal sinus. But how? Let me show you. Now this is the picture of the fourth ventricle, and you can see the red color choroid plexus formed here and is contributing in the formation of CSF. The CSF from the fourth ventricle, it has to enter into the central canal and of course in the subarachnoid space, and this space is where it is present in between the cerebellomedullary cisterns. And from here you can follow the arrows, they are running through the subarachnoid space. And finally I will show you another diagram that the destination is where. Now you can see that these arrows are running through the subarachnoid space and into the arachnoid granulations. And what are they? They are coming from the arachnoid matter and opening into the superior sagittal sinus for the final destination of the CSF. Another good diagram showing the flow of the CSF, and this CSF through subarachnoid space is entering into the arachnoid granulations, which are definitely opening into the superior sagittal sinus. And this is how the CSF that was produced in the ventricles, they had to pass through the subarachnoid space, and finally through arachnoid granulations they are entering or draining into the superior sagittal sinus. This is the superior cut view to show you the choroidal plexus. What are they? They are basically vascular structure, and you can say that the pia mater along with its vascularity, and they are tucked into the choroidal fissure along with the ependymal layer, which is simple columnar or simple cuboidal lined with the microvilli, and they are supposed to produce CSF. And which vessels contribute in it? Let me tell you that the internal cerebral veins and the thalamostriate veins, and of course the posterior choroidal branches of the posterior cerebral arteries, they are taking part in the formation of choroid plexus, right, which are gonna produce the CSF. Let me sum up again. The two blue color lateral ventricles, they are supposed to communicate with the third ventricle through interventricular foramen, and the yellow color, the cerebral aqueduct, is gonna enter into the green color fourth ventricle, which is going to communicate with that of the central canal that runs through the spinal cord, right? And this is another picture to show you this map again, the ventricular system that is meant to produce the CSF. So now we can answer these questions, that CSF comes from the choroidal plexus of the lateral ventricle, the third ventricle and the fourth ventricle. And from where they flow? They start flowing from the lateral ventricle, then into the third, and through the cerebral aqueduct into the fourth ventricle, and through subarachnoid spaces they are supposed to go through arachnoid granulations and being drained into superior sagittal sinus. In this way, the whole communication of or circulation of the CSF occurs.